Hello, welcome to Reads of an Apple, or welcome back. And I'm here to start the vlog for the Romance Takeover Readathon. I'm super excited. It's another round. If you've never heard of it before, it is created by Jenn from the Book Refuge. And this year it is hosted by Jenn, obviously, Tiffany, who's Tiff Talks Pages, or Neverland Pixie, Christi from Christi Reads a Lot, and Rachel from Rachel Reads and Sings. I will have everybody linked down below. If you did not see, I did talk about this in my March TBR, so I'll link the video up here, but I'll also kind of go over stuff as well. It's another create your own bingo board, which is great. And I chose the 3x3 option. So here's the bingo board that I created. So we have 5-star prediction, fantasy romance, a backlist title from an author you love, historical romance, next book in a series, new release, audiobook, novella, and host a recommendation. And I will be applying a book to as many prompts as it fits. So yeah, I'm excited to just kind of read this week. I should be working on boxes, but I just need to read when I can. And I've already finished one book. It is currently Tuesday. Technically, it started yesterday, March 6th, and it will run through this weekend through March 12th. But anyway, let's talk about the first book that I am going to use for the readathon. I finished Song of the Forever Rains. I was listening to the audiobook. This is available on KU as a read and listen. And I read most of this book Sunday afternoon and Monday at work. So I'm counting it for the readathon because I read like 60% when during the time I was dedicating to the readathon, so I'm counting it. I'm not going to talk too much about it though, because this is the final book I was reading for my new to me fantasy romance authors vlog. So I will link that up above for you to check out my full thoughts. But I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. I'm very interested to continue on in the trilogy. So this worked for the prompts, fantasy, romance, and audiobooks. I already have 2 of my 9 boxes ticked off, which is great. But then we'll talk about the books that I have. More specifically, I have 3 books on my official TBR, but I have a couple other options that I talked about in my March TBR, but we're going to talk about the ones that I've already started. So last night, I started The Ugly Stepsister by Megan Van Dyke. This is the second book in her reimagined fairy tale series. This came out, I want to say, last September, and it was highly anticipated for me before it came out, and I just never got around to picking it up for some reason. I just got bogged down in getting books done. But I needed to get this read because the next book comes out in April, so I wanted to get caught up, and now was the perfect time because I kind of pulled back in a lot of book clubs this month. So yeah, but I'm very excited. Like I said, I started this last night, and I was able to read a little bit, like a little bit during the game. As you can tell, I'm wearing my Avalanche gear because there was a game tonight. However, I saw them score a goal a couple minutes into the first period, and then I fell asleep. And I woke up during the second intermission, and they were up 6-0. I was like, oh, what did I sleep through? But anyway, they ended up winning 6-0. So that was great. But so I only really read this during the pregame show and the third period. So I didn't read too much tonight, but I do plan on taking a shower and then going to bed and reading some more and trying not to stay up near as late. But I am on chapter 14 and 90 pages in. I am a big fan of Megan Van Dyke. She is a newer author. The first book in this series was her debut book last year. And I just love it. So this is Cinderella, but let me just... I've read like the blurb on the back multiple times because I'm super duper excited. Oh, I should also say this is my signed copy. I pre-ordered a signed copy from her Etsy shop. And I do have character artwork too. But there's like a little info blurb in the beginning, and I wanted to read it to you because that kind of sets up the story. And then we'll talk about what's happened so far. So, the kingdom rejoiced when the prince chose Ella to be his bride, a commoner, one of their own, plucked from the misery of her life to live in the castle as his one true love. It was the thing of songs, of stories told to children. The people's affection only grew as Cinderella shared the terrors of her recent years. The wicked stepmother and stepsisters who bullied her, torn her gowns, forced her to work in the fields, and called her names. They even made her sleep next to the fireplace and called her Cinderella for the soot that clung to her face and hair when she woke. And because she was young and beautiful, the prince loved her, and the people believed every single one of her lies. Oh my gosh. I'm not a big Cinderella retelling fan, but I'm super excited. So this is Anna's story. So Anna is Anastasia, which is fun. One of the stepsisters. And this is set after Cinderella, Ella, marries the prince. And the king had gotten sick and died. And then Prince Nicholas and Ella became king and queen. And then shortly after their coronation, the king got, so the prince, formerly the prince, got sick and died. So now Ella is queen. And there is the fairy godmother here. However, Ella twists things up. And it was actually... the way that the stepmother is described is she was just kind of like a ditzy person, but that things were fine when they were a family group, when Ella's father married Anna's mother and then her sister Charlotte. But then when Ella's father died, she changed. And a lot of people thought it's just grief. She'll work through it. She'll kind of come back to the same personality somewhat that she had before. But she never did. She just became very vindictive, very manipulative. And a lot of the things that you hear that people talk about in the book and in the Cinderella story of what the evil stepmother and stepsisters did to Ella, she actually did to them. There's also kind of a reference. It's very briefly touched on, but she killed Charlotte's cat. So, Ella is not a good person. But the fairy godmother... when people are, she's working these potions, and because she helped Ella come into power, she kind of has a thumb over Ella-ish. I mean, they're still kind of working together, but she definitely has kind of guilted Ella into helping her do some unsavory things because she helped her get where she is and things like that. But to keep the city, I guess, and her people all okay with the situation that happens, they're basically all under compulsion. And the way that this happens is Ella offers free food, free drinks, there's banquets, and everybody's kind of invited to eat, kind of is forced to eat the food, and the potions are laced into all of this food, which is keeping them kosher with what's actually going on. There is a small sect of people who are it was interesting because it said there's the people who actually love and believe Ella. There's the people that are compelled to love and believe Ella. And then there's the people who pretend to love Ella. And so Anna was able to escape because once Ella became queen and the prince had passed, she sent guards after Anna and her sister and her mom, and they were supposed to be captured and sent to the fairy godmother's place as like laborers. So it sounds like she has slave laborers of all of these people who are against the crown situation, but it's still kind of not sure what exactly is happening during there. But Anna was able to escape, and she has since been living as Ansel, and she's been dressing as a man, and she's been just kind of doing farm labor and staying outside the city because she is like most wanted in the city. And she is trying to find some information or steal some things from guards who are leaving the fairy godmother's cottage to head to town. And she runs into Will and a little group of, and then a family that he's teamed up with. And so Will is a former huntsman, maybe, for the castle. So, but where I just read, she talks about how he had a very similar look on his face to a painting that she saw of the prince. So I'm wondering if he's the prince in disguise and he was able to escape his death. I don't know. I'm so excited. I love it. I just love just the world and where the story is going. But so this is kind of fun because Anna has been dressed up as Ansel, and then she runs into Will and this little group of people he's with. And the little group of people he's with. So there's Will, and then there's this little threesome family group, and they are a part of the rebellion, so to speak, because some of their siblings used to work at the mines, and Ella, when she became queen, wanted specific gems and stones pulled from the mines, but they were in an area where they had to close down the mine because it was unsafe to go there, and that's the only area where these stones and gems can be found. And when the mine workers were like, no, we're not going to do that, we're not going to put ourselves in unnecessary danger just because you want these pretty baubles, basically they all got like tortured and taken to the fairy godmother camp. So they're all trying to rescue people from them, and Anna's trying to save her mom and stepsister, or her mom and her sister from this. So they're all kind of teaming up. And so, like I said, Anna's been dressing as a boy, Ansel. And when they come back to town, and she's super nervous because she's like most wanted, and she has a very distinctive mole, I think by her eye or something, but she's, been dressing as a boy. She's wearing loose clothing. She's trying to keep herself like grungy and dirty to be less recognizable. She's cut her long hair off. But so they go to these people's house who are kind of on the outskirts of the city. And what's happening in the city is Ella is finding a search for the fairest maiden in all the kingdom. Now, we have kind of gotten hints that this may be for a nefarious reason, because it's the fairy godmother who wants the fairest in the kingdom. And who knows for what. But they basically convince, so there's a younger daughter, Marina, something like that. And she's kind of put in a situation where this will be a way for them to potentially get close to the queen because they're hoping to poison her or kill her or something like that. And they kind of notice that Ansel is a little bit effeminate and he's not like grown into his manhood, although they talk about how he's mature behind his ears and his eyes. And so we've got Anna dressed as a boy who's dressing as a girl to do this fairest maiden competition. So I'm just like, whoa, this is fun. And then Will is as her companion, and so he's pretending to be her fiance. And he's just like, now's not the time, because he still thinks she's a boy, but he's seen some things. He's like, her neck is really smooth, like she has no Adam's apple. And so he's seen hints where he has some inner doubts, but he's also questioning if that's because he's like second guessing himself and his sexuality. And he's like, she keeps saying she's a boy, but I don't know if she's a boy. The curve of her neck looks very feminine. She doesn't have an Adam's apple. And so he's seeing these little hints that maybe she's not. And so he's not like 100% sure. And then poor Anna, I mean, one of the things, she was bullied heavily by Ella, and she was constantly called ugly. And she just kind of refers to herself like, because Ella is, you know, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, you know, beauty ideal in this kingdom. And Ella, you know, she had brown hair. It wasn't like anything magnificent. It was just brown, normal brown hair. And she felt like she wasn't ugly, but that she was just like normal looking. But she has a lot of insecurities about that, but she's struggling because she is very drawn to Will. And she's just like, if I were able to have gone after any man myself, I wouldn't have gone for one of these like aristocrat type characters. I would have gone for someone who's a little more rugged, because he's got a beard and he's been living in the woods even more so. But I think the beard is to kind of hide his identity. But even then, he's very like rugged. He's a huntsman, and so she's very attracted to him. And so she's fighting that. But she's also kind of fighting the fact that because she's attracted to him, she wants him to see her. And she's kind of like struggling with herself because she's trying to put up this front so she doesn't get caught. And I mean, because she's potentially coming face to face with the queen who wants her captured in disguise. And so it's just like this really weird, funky situation. And on top of the fact that they're both kind of lusting after each other, but they both have different types of insecurities and doubts on if they should even try to act on these feelings. But you can kind of see them starting to fall for each other. And poor Anna. She's just like, I just want somebody to want me and to see me as I am. And it's just weird for her because he's seeing her as a woman, and she's doing the things that she was like taught to do and curtsy and be a lady. And she wants Will to see these things and like them. But she also knows he thinks she's a man pretending to do these. So it's like this weird situation, but I'm enjoying it. Yeah. And so where I just stopped, they were listening in the walls to get to the queen. They caused a distraction and were able to try to get to her because they were hoping to just kind of take care of her right away. But obviously that's not going to happen because we still have most of the book left. But yeah, as you can tell, I'm enjoying this. I mean, I have seen some conversation about Megan's writing, and she is a newer author. So if I think writing styles or things like that really stick out to you and bother you, just be warned, she is a newer author. This is only like her third book published, I think. Yeah, because she only has 4 books published right now. So she is still new, but I just totally lost my train of thought. I love the story, and writing style and word choices don't, if I'm not enjoying a story, then that sticks out to me. But when I'm enjoying a story and I'm just like, what is happening, and having so much fun, that type of stuff doesn't bother me. So if you like fairy tale retellings, if you like twists on fairy tale retellings, I definitely recommend Megan Van Dyke. I am enjoying myself so far. This is a 5-star prediction for me, and so far so good. I am really intrigued. I knew she was going to be dressed up as Ansel because that's in the blurb, but I was not expecting her to be a woman dressed as a man who's now pretending to dress as a woman, because it's just like, whoa. But yeah, I'm loving it. I'm having fun. So yeah, I will update you once I have read more of this for sure. And then the other thing, I'm not going to go too much into it. I did start the audiobook today for The Takeover. This is another book that was on my official TBR. So I have started 2 of my 3 official TBR books, which is great. I'm only like 8% in. I started this at work, and then somehow or another, I heard a song, or I heard about a song, and then I looked up the song on Spotify, and then I was going through that artist backlist. So then I switched to listening to music over audiobook, and then I listened to a little bit more when I got home and was making dinner and stuff. So I'm only like 8% in. And so we've got Tristan and Claire's first meeting, and then 6 months later, I do have to say, I did get a little ticked off a little bit. Claire is talking to her assistant, Marnie, I think. It starts with an M. But she says something like, you have to get over it, or you have to move on. And I understand. You don't want to be stuck in your grief. But as someone who has suffered through lots of different kinds of grief, I get very frustrated when people in books and in real life tell other people how to grieve and when they should be out of that. And she almost kind of forces her that it's time to remove her rings off of her left hand and onto her right hand. And I get it. You can't be stuck there. But it sounds like to me that because so much happened after her husband's death, that she had her 3 kids to take care of. She had taken over her husband's company, that she never really was allowed fully the time to really immerse herself in her grief and work through it. It's always kind of been, and we'll see as we get into it, and this might just be for me going through my own grief journeys. But, sometimes you just only let a little bit out at a time, and you kind of deal with what you can, but you just haven't really dug into it. And, I've had people really close to me pass, and I've gone through my grief journey and been, more customized or more adapted or to a new, base normal, would be the way to say it, quicker. And then I've been through grief journey where, there are still days now where I have really hard struggling days. So I just really didn't like that she was just like, you need to move on. No, grief is, if it's someone that you really cared about, that grief will be there for the rest of your life. It's just how you manage to handle it and work through it and survive through it. Because I like to say, and I've heard it from other people, grief is waves. It's not a straight line. Grief is waves. There are good days, there are bad days, and it is constant and everlasting. So that was my one little nitpick for it so far. But otherwise, that's all I really have to say so far. But I will let you know when I've read more of it. I'll see you tomorrow. Hello, happy Wednesday. I have a reading update for you, and I have some things to gush about. But first off, can I just say how sad I am? I dropped my book this morning when I was moving it from the bedroom to the living room, and I dropped it, and you can see the crease here, and it folded and fell, and now there's a huge crease down the middle, and I would buy a new copy, but this is my signed copy. But this is why I have 2 copies of each of the Stay a Spell series. I buy my copy when it comes out, but I read from, and then I have my signed copies. So those don't get damaged, but it's okay. It's okay. It just shows it's well loved, right? But anyway, I am on chapter 28 to page 200. Oh my gosh. So things got really, really crazy. So, we found out we were doing the, all the ladies were taken in to meet the queen, to find the fairest of them all. And then we found out that it's actually the fairy godmother who wants the queen. And what ends up happening is Mina, the sister of the guys that Anna has kind of teamed up with, ends up trying on the glass slippers because each lady is brought up to the queen, and then Ella kind of looks them over, and then she had a couple people she's like, here, try on these shoes, and she's wearing her glass slippers, which is fun. And then when Mina tried on the glass shoes, they started glowing. And then while that's happening, Will is trying to kind of move to the back because he's worried about being recognized. And then the Chancellor sees him and recognizes him, so he takes his chance and he stabs the Chancellor. And then he draws all of the guards in the area. But this enables... It wasn't quite intended to be a distraction. He more just kind of lost his patience and his calm for a second. But he ends up causing the distraction while he's fighting all of the guards. So then the smart brother Cohen and Anna are able to get Mina away from the queen and take her home, so they're able to escape and just kind of blend in with everybody else who's trying to rush away. But they're able to do so because the guards are so focused on protecting the queen that they're just kind of letting all of the maidens that are here just kind of run off and do what they will. So we've got that going on, and then we had seen earlier in the book, there's this huge elaborate mirror that was like in the town square, and it was used as like a or as a two-way communication device for the queen when there were all these rumors, for her safety, for her to still meet with her constituents without having to be like in the room with them. And so they would have like their meeting with the monarch type thing, but it was all in the town square, and Cinderella was in the mirror. And so she was like video chatting them. But so Will is kind of losing and he ends up kind of bumping into the mirror, and the mirror is actually a gateway, and so he pops out of the mirror in the square. So he is able to get away, but his arm was pretty damaged. And then when he arrives back at the house, and we've kind of seen what happens, but Mina has since like fallen asleep, and Cohen is trying all of his different potions and techniques to see if he can try to wake her up, because she was just getting groggy and sleepy and very tired, and now she's just kind of unconscious. So think like a Sleeping Beauty type sleep. And before Will shows back up at the house, some of the palace guards actually show up, and they have one of Cinderella's glass slippers, and they are going house to house to find all the young women to try on the shoe, and they are hoping to find the fair maiden who escaped from the queen. But because Mina's unconscious upstairs, Anna is still kind of in her getup because it was shortly after they arrived back at the house. So she's able to kind of play it off, and it doesn't fit her, of course. I was just like so nervous what was going to happen, but it doesn't even fit completely on her foot, which was I was happy with. Which also fits like the normal fairy tale, which is fun. So we did get the little bit of the glass shoe kind of stuff going on. But so Anna ends up, and then Will shows up shortly after, and this is about page 130, but everyone officially knows Anna is a girl. However, Will, when he was escaping and leading the guards on like a chase through the town trying to get away from them, he came across an old wanted poster, and so he's pretty sure that Ansel is like, he had a feeling she was a woman, but that has been confirmed. But now he thinks she's Anna. And so he's like, oh, so he feels even worse for kind of dragging her into the situation to the palace, because he didn't realize she was her sister. And then there was this moment where he felt really bad, because he believed, like everybody else, these horrible stories. But now, knowing what he knows about Cinderella and all of her lies and manipulation tactics, he's like, why did I still believe those stories she was telling about her sisters and her stepmother? And so I was just like, oh my gosh. So they all take Mina to a convent that's outside the town in the mountains, and they used to come by and like bring healing potions and things like that, but since Cinderella basically took over as queen, they've been kind of just gotten rid of. And there's this really funny thing where they protect like women who have been through horrific things. And it's really funny because the like head nun there, she's asking Anna, and they know, and Anna had stayed with them, so like Anna knew of them and they know of Anna. But Anna says something like it was the fairy godmother magic that caused this, and she's like, she is no god and she is no mother, because they worship the mother, capital M. So I thought it just made me chuckle. But so she is kind of being taken care of by the people in the convent, and Ansel / Anna, Will, Cohen, and then the other brother that's with them, who I haven't said it all, Brandt. They are making their way to the fairy godmother, and they're trying to come up with a plan to figure out what exactly it is that the fairy godmother did to Mina, and how to save her, and also how to save Anna's family and Cohen and Brandt and Mina's families. And then we get a little hint that he has some secrets, and when Anna approaches him about these secrets, he doesn't share all of them, but he does kind of say that there's some stuff he can't really talk about, but that before he like had his clarity and was attempted to be killed and left for dead in the woods, that he wasn't just, coerced into believing the best, but he was manipulated and controlled is the word that he uses. So he was made to do things through these nefarious magical means to commit acts that he wouldn't do and that are horrendous. And he's like, I can't really talk about them, but it, a part of my soul is forever darkened by those experiences. But there's still a secret he hasn't told her. And so we spent them traveling, and then they finally got a little bit steamy. There was a kiss when they were at the before they met the queen. There was like a fake kiss to like when they were sneaking off, to try to pretend like this is why they're sneaking off. And then they've been kissing and touching each other and going down on each other, and so like the steam is definitely ramping up between them. So they are getting close to the fairy godmother. They're like a day out, and they're camping, and they're discussing, trying to figure out what they're gonna do. And Will gets angry because they come up with a plan for for Ansel / Anna to masquerade that she's Mina, and so she would be sleeping, and then the guys can approach the fairy godmother and said that they found the person that they were looking for. She was the one who was the fairest of them all, and use that as an in to approach the fairy godmother. But they run into some guards that have the color of the fairy godmother. So they are the soldiers that are controlled or dealt with by the fairy godmother. And Will gets freaked out because he recognizes the leader of this group, and he's worried he's gonna get recognized. And he does, and the guy has a knife and that Will had given him as a gift several years before. And this is where I end. The last sentence in the previous chapter ends with him asking Will a question, this guard dude, and at the end he says, "Well, Nicholas?" Oh my gosh. I read that this morning because I had a little bit of time before I had to go to work, and I was like, why do I have to go to work? I cannot wait to pick this book back up later tonight. I am so excited. I thought there was that little hint when they were in the castle where I was like, wait a second. Does he have a secret? Does he have a secret identity too? And I might have mentioned before that I thought it was interesting that maybe he had a similar glance or he had a look on his face similar to the prince in one of the paintings. And so I was like, oh, is it the prince? Is the prince really alive? And then I thought, oh, maybe he's like the prince's brother. And I didn't talk about this with you, but I was thinking maybe he's the prince's brother, or he's related to the prince somehow, because he talks about how he was friends with the prince, and that's how he knew some of the secret passageways in the castle. Outside of just being the huntsman, because those passageways aren't known, but he talked about how he was friends with the prince when they were kids. So I thought, oh, maybe he's an illegitimate brother or something like that, or related to him somehow. But he might be the prince. So, I mean, technically it's cheating because he's still technically married to Cinderella. But I don't know if the fact that he was killed and somehow survived negates that. But I don't care. I'm just like, what? And so, and Anna. Oh, I feel so bad for Anna. Now they're captured by the fairy godmother's people. Oh my gosh. So, yeah. I don't even know how long this is. It's over 300 pages. So I have just under 150 pages. So, yeah, so we'll see if I finish this tonight. Now that I'm talking about it though, I don't even want to work on boxes. I want to watch Married at First Sight and eat dinner, and then I want to read the rest of the night. So that might be what I'm doing, but I am having so much fun and loving this so much right now. And unless something absolutely crazy happens, my 5-star prediction will come true, because I am just living for this book right now. It's just so much fun. It's just so much fun. I just love it. So she's making me like Cinderella retellings. And book 3 that comes out next month is an Alice in Wonderland retelling. And I'm not the biggest Alice in Wonderland fan. And I haven't really read very many Alice in Wonderland retellings. But, I mean, I'm excited. And then I should also say book 4 in this series, which is supposed to come out Q4 of 2023, is her version of a Beauty and the Beast retelling. So I'm just like, give them all to me, Megan. Give them all to me. And yeah. So I will, unless something absolutely bonkers happens that I have to talk to you about, I will be back to update you once I have finished this. As for the Takeover audiobook, I did not read any of that today. There was a lot going on at work, and I just kind of ended up putting up on some of my sports radio stuff and just listening to those because it was just up and down and dealing with this. And like, we were slammed, but we weren't slammed with customers. We were slammed with huge parts orders, customers, the guys in the back, and then the granddaughter came in today. So it was just like so much going on. But yeah, anyway, I'll stop rambling at you and I will be back with another update, hopefully very soon. Hello, good morning. It is currently Sunday morning, so I have some catching up to do. Things were kind of busy Thursday and Friday, and then Friday night I was going to do a clip, and then I sat down and I was reading, and then the reading sprints for the readathon happened, and that's all I did the rest of the night. I read, and then I finally was like, oh my gosh, it's super late, I'm gonna go to bed. And then I read some more. So yeah, and then yesterday, Saturday, was pretty busy. I was just kind of taking care of things. So let's just kind of get into it. So I did finish The Ugly Stepsister Wednesday night, and I gave it 5 stars. I mean, I enjoy Megan Van Dyke's storytelling so much. It was just so much fun, and I loved that that final just sequence of figuring out what's going on and taking out the fairy godmother, and then dealing with Cinderella and the dude that was helping, that she was in love with. What is his name? He was like the chancellor or something like that. But then we were dealing with him, so it was just like, it went in directions I wasn't expecting. But I was trying not to expect too much. But I don't know, it sweeps me away, and I have such a fun time, and I don't know, I just kind of go along with the ride and enjoy where we're going, and I had a lot of fun. And I thought it was interesting that there's an author note at the end that mentions there's the sneak peek. Yeah, so it's in the acknowledgements that this bullying situation that happened with Anna kind of stemmed from some experiences that Megan dealt with herself, and how sometimes you're the one that's being bullied, but then in public the bullier is flipping it to seem like the good person and the hurt person. And so it just, a lot of things clicked even more reading that acknowledgement. And bullying sucks, man. Bullying really sucks. But I just loved it, and I cannot wait for book 3 to come in April. And I feel like I'm not saying very much, but I know I've talked a lot of spoilers so far, but I don't really want to spoil the big ending huzzah. But we get our happy ending, and it was just so much fun, and I love books that just are fun, So 5 stars. And then for the prompts that I used this for was 5-star prediction, fantasy, romance, and next book in the series, which is great. Now, before I finished this, I took a bath, and I had read that in bed because I didn't want to read my paperback in the bath. And so I was just kind of looking to see what was on my Kindle, and I decided to pick up How to Marry a Marble Marquis by C.M. Nascosta. This is the first book I've read by her, and total random pick. I already had it checked out. I checked it out when it was released at the end of February, and so I started that Wednesday night, and then I finished it Thursday night. So I am going to give this 4 stars. I might bump it up a little bit, but I'll round it down to 4 stars, so I might change it to 4.5. But I thought this was super fun, and this is a fantasy romance and a historical romance. We have Eleanor, and she had a huge scandal, and she is trying to get married, more so that her younger sisters can have, for the security of marriage, so that she can take care of her younger sisters and get them to finish their schooling, and then she can find good matches for them once they're of age. And so she is instructed by the queen that she's not allowed basically to any of the normal society events anymore, and she's required to go to the monsters ball. And so she has who she calls an uncle, and he is an orc. And so monsters are like very much, everyone knows them. They have the Beaumont, and then I think it was like the Beast Bond or something like that. And I thought that was fun. But so the monsters are very like incorporated into society. Everybody knows them. They're in the gossip articles. And then we have Silas, who is a marquis, and he is a gargoyle. And I've read gargoyle romances before, but this was a different kind of gargoyle romance. And so I thought that was interesting that he had a different mythos than I've read before, but I have heard of this mythos just about gargoyles in general, but just not in romance. But he turns to stone during the day, and so they are 100% nocturnal creatures, and he is tasked, because he is friends with the Earl, to kind of help prepare and teach Eleanor how to succeed at the monsters ball. And then it is their love story. So we got teaching. She is not a virgin. She had one experience when she was really young with like a stable boy or something, but that's it. But so because she's not a virgin, there is a lot of sexual teachings that happen. And he is a rake. Like, we see him with other women before they are officially a couple. It is warned about, like, he is a rake, what you expect a rake to be. Yeah, so I enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I gave it 4 stars. Even though he is a rake, I would have liked for him to, once they got serious, to not have him be with other people. Like when they first meet and he goes to the brothel and is with someone, okay, fine, whatever, that's proving the point and showing us that he is a rake. But when he goes again later, I don't think anything happens, but he at least goes there and it's talked about in the gossip rag. I didn't like that, because at that point they had already fully slept together. So I didn't like that as much, which I know that she warns you, but at that point he is aware that he is just super attracted to her and that he can't get her out of his mind. I did want more interactions between Eleanor and his sister. I thought that would have been fun. I guess they just meet once and we don't even see it. We just hear about it when Eleanor is reminiscing about the meeting. And so I wanted to see more of her. And then we kind of find out some background, which is interesting at the end of the book, and I thought that was cute. And it seems like, even though this is part of the Monster Ball multi-author series, that this is also going to be a part of a series by C.M. Nacasta herself, and it was like Talons and something. It was a T and T word, and I don't like to read sneak peek of the next book stuff, because I don't like to reread stuff. But it seems like, just kind of skimming through it while I was giving her the page counts, that It sounds like his older brother might be the next book that she's writing in this associated series. So I definitely will probably look into picking that up because he's a pirate, and so that's super fun. So yeah, and I'm excited to have read my first CM Nascosta. I'm not super intrigued by Morning Glory Milking Farm. I have read some Minotaur romances before, but usually they shapeshift into human form. But I don't know if I can handle like a full-on Minotaur. Just because, you know, I was raised near farms and, you know, been around cows a lot growing up, and that's just weird. It's kind of weird for me. But we'll see. I might give it a go at some point. But anyway, for the prompts, this worked for fantasy romance, historical romance, and new release, which is great. Yeah, so I finished that Thursday night. And then I went off TBR again on Friday morning. I had to take my little kitty to the vet to get her next round of blood work done for her thyroid. And the next physical book I wanted to read was a paperback book, because the only other book I had left on my TBR at that point was Vivian Lorette's new release. But I just had my Kindle with me. So I ended up choosing to read Broken by the Horde King. This is book 4 in her Horde Kings of Dukar. And every time I read one of these books, I just kick myself. I had read the first 2 books in this series back when they first came out, and then for some reason never went back to her until her newest release in her new Brides of the Kylor series. And then I was like, why did I never go back to Horde Kings? And so I ended up picking up book 3, and now I'm on book 4, and it's taking everything I can to not binge the rest of this series. And I'm pretty sure I only have 1 or 2 books left in her backlist after I finish this series. So it'd be great to finish a backlist author for me. But this one was great. I gave it 5 stars. I love Zoe Draven. This one in the series, though, is not my favorite. It's Second Chance Romance, and it made sense here, but I'm just not a big fan of Second Chance Romance and some of the miscommunications that kind of happen over and over, and, you know, people both hiding that they're hurt and misconstruing it as hate, but it's like, no, they're just hurt and they're trying to protect themselves after being hurt. And this book had me crying so much because I am the easiest person, I feel like, in the world to make cry. I am a sympathetic crier, so people are crying in the books and I'm just bawling. And but I enjoyed it. I loved it. I loved Kieran. Oh, he is so swoony, and he really just pushed and pushed and pushed Maeva to accept him and to really kind of open back up and put her walls down. And I just really loved how he was just like, no, I'm gonna do it, and you're wording it like a challenge, and that's partly or subconsciously intentional by her. And he didn't care. He just did it. He just was like, nope, you're mine. And I thought it was super interesting. There's a red fog in the world where the sorceress in book 3, I'm spacing on her name, where she used the Heartstone. And like, monsters are going crazy and going to places where they can't, or where they typically don't reside. And I'm like, what is going on with this red fog? And I don't know if the red fog is going to be dealt with in next book or in the last book, but I'm just like, what is happening? And so I'm really excited to continue on in the series. I already have book 5 checked out on KU because I immediately was like, return and check out the next one. So we'll see. I probably won't get to it for the readathon, but if I have more time to do some mood reading, I probably will be picking up at least book 5 somewhat soon. But yeah, what I also really thought was interesting is Maeva is a human. Our heroine is also human, like the other previous books. But we didn't have like the culture clash here. She was found as a young child. I think it said she was like 3 or 4 years old by one of the warriors of Kieran's father's. His father used to be a Vorakar, one of the Horde Kings, but then once he like retired, he made like a settlement, so they don't travel anymore, but he has his settlement over by the sea, which we had heard about before, and he's the person who is protecting one of the 2 known Heartstones. But so one of his warriors at the settlement finds Maeva when she's really young, and they take her in. So she is the lone human in this Dakari settlement. And so she's raised amongst the Dakari. And she actually doesn't even know like the universal English language until she's older, and she asks the queen to help teach her. But she wants to be a healer, and so she's been training to be a healer. And it was really interesting because once Kieran comes back and kind of forces her to become the healer for his horde during the frost while they're kind of stationary because you can't really travel around during the winter, she meets her first humans. And she's just like, I've never seen someone with my features outside of looking in the mirror at myself. And so that was just really interesting. And we didn't have that culture. Like there was some things difference between living in the horde and living the stationary lifestyle. And so she didn't know all of the like nuances of being in the horde, but it wasn't like as much of a major like culture conflict as before. But I thought it was super cool because we got to see, it gave it a little bit of a different take on the human Dakari dynamic. And I loved that they were childhood friends. So it was great. 5 stars. For prompts, this worked for 5-star prediction, backlist author, and so backlist author, I think the full prompt is backlist title from an author you love, and then next book in a series. So, so I finished that yesterday morning, so Saturday morning, and then Saturday night after the Avalanche game and everything, I was looking at my prompts, and I really want to pick this up, but I don't think I'm going to finish this or get this started for the readathon, but this will probably be the next book I pick up after the readathon. Which makes me kind of disappointed because I only had 3 TBR books, but I have just kind of started mood reading like crazy. But the only prompt that I didn't have that I had left to cover was novella. So I spent way too long trying to decide on a novella to pick up, and I finally settled on The Basilisk of Star Manor. Now, this is the novella that comes after The Lady of Rooksgrave Manor by Catherine Moon, and it was fine. I'm not a big fan of reverse harem, I like my couple to be 2 beings. That's the way I prefer it. I'm not into menages. I'm not into multiple partners. It just doesn't work for me. I myself am like very possessive, and so I don't like sharing in that aspect. But I was intrigued to pick this up to see how because the only book I've read from her was Lady of Rooksgrave, and I saw that this was a 2-being couple. So I was intrigued to see how she would handle a 2-person couple in this world, because I did enjoy the world and kind of the situation. And this is her Tempting Monster series, I believe. So this is listed as novella 1.5. So it worked perfectly in line of what I've read. And don't ask me why I picked this one up, because I am not a snake person at all. Why did I choose Basilisk Monster? But this one was really interesting. So this is Lillian, and she was rescued by the Madame of the Brothel from an asylum. And she was put in asylum basically because when her father died, he thought that she wouldn't be able to carry on the title or anything, which kind of made it sound like she would have been able to if she hadn't been blind, which doesn't really make sense in a historical context, but okay, whatever. But because she was blind, her father left everything to her cousin, and her cousin kept trying to force her to marry him, and she wouldn't. So she was put in the asylum, and then she was rescued by the madame. And after she had stayed there, when you're taken into this specific brothel, Star Manor, you aren't forced to sleep with the monsters or to offer services. And she feels like she wants to take that step. She's very interested in it. She is a very sensual person. She just hasn't been able to act or learn any of those things. So because she's blind, she's like perfect for the basilisk, because if you meet his gaze, you turn to stone. So he is invited to join Star Manor, and it is a very slow seduction. He teaches her a lot about pleasure and a lot about herself. He has a venom, which I thought was interesting, but instead of it just being an aphrodisiac, the way that he describes his venom is that it heightens sensations. So if you're angry and you have this venom in you, you're going to get even more angry. And so it's not just focused around pleasure. It just heightens whatever emotions, whatever sensations you're currently experiencing, which I thought was super cool. But he is actually sent in as a spy because he's currently a member of Brisha's brothel, something like that. And Brisha, I guess, is the one behind the attack on Rooksgrave Manor back then in the first book. And then he's attacking their new manor because he really hates this other person. But he doesn't care about the women in his brothel, and it sounds like his is kind of a seedy place. And so this is Marius' basilisk, and he ends up falling for Lillian, and he wants to protect her, and he feels trapped from the deal he made with Brisha, and he's like, okay, fine, I'll still fulfill my deal with Brisha and help him attack the manor, but I'm going to take Lillian and steal her away because she is mine. And then he kind of comes to the realization that Brisha knows about Lillian, so she'll never be safe. And he decides to side with the manor instead. So yeah, I mean, it was fun. I gave it 4 stars. I did want it was a little more sensual and sex lust based, like Rooksgrave Manor. I did want a little bit more of the romantic situation in it, but I definitely enjoyed their romance more, and I felt like there was more substantial emotional connection than with Lady of Rooksgrave Manor. But that also could be because that other character was just completely a sex craze. Like, she is like a sex addict. But yeah, there was a note at the end that she plans on doing more little novellas like this. So I don't think I'll pick up any of her other harem books. But if she has any other in this world or in other series, or she just writes other to-being couples, I might pick them up. It was interesting. I mean, it was a good, fun, quick read to end my Saturday nights. So yeah, there is that. And then updates on the takeover. So I am still listening to the audiobook. I have been off and on listening to it at work all week, and I was listening to it today as well. And let me see what I'm officially at. because I am on chapter 20, but let me see what percentage that is when I look at my Kindle here. So that is 75% in. So I'm almost done. According to my Audible, I have a couple chapters left, so almost all the way through. I plan on working on some more boxes today and finishing that up because I don't have a game or anything like that tonight. I just have the wrap up, the readathon live show wrap up later tonight at 6 o'clock my time. So that's super exciting. So I definitely should be able to get it done by then. Oh, I forgot to mention Basilisk of Star Manor I used for fantasy romance, historical romance, next book in a series, and novella. It worked for all three of those. Okay, so back to the takeover. I'm enjoying this. Right now it's sitting at like a 4.5 stars for me. Once we got past kind of like that first like 10-15%, I started kind of getting the humor, and I loved Tristan interacting with the kids, and I was busting out laughing. It's a lot steamier than I expected. Like, there is a lot of tension between Claire and Tristan, and I feel like anytime they're alone, they're like getting it on, which is fine. But I think the little ticks that I have is I wasn't a big fan of the first meeting with the kids. It just felt a little too over the top with the situation. And I know that like kids can be crazy. I grew up with two siblings. Like us three used to do some really silly, stupid crap. But that first part just felt like over the top. Like it was a little over sensationalized because it wanted the shock value of it. And then the grief thing that I mentioned before just still kind of rubs me wrong a little bit. But I'm enjoying it. But I will give you my full thoughts once I finish it. So I will do another clip later today. But I wanted to do an update before I get working on boxes. So I will see you all very soon. Hello. Happy end of the Romance Takeover Readathon. It is 11 o'clock. And I ended up not picking up any other books today after I finished the takeover. So yeah, we are finishing with the takeover. So let's chat about that a little bit. I'm going to give it 4.5 stars. I enjoyed it. I'm a big fan of Tristan. The ending in the third act conflict, so to speak, though, really kind of solidified it being a 4.5 over a 5-star. I don't know, and maybe because I know it's a favorite of a lot of people and being a little nitpicky with it, but there were a couple things, especially with their conflict, where I understand that Claire's response was very emotionally based, and she was feeling very overwhelmed by the situation. But I can also see that, and I never really saw any remorse or understanding come from Tristan about this. But I mean, he pushed it. Him surprising on her that he's looking at buying a house. Not just let's look at a house together, but I'm gonna buy this house for us if we like this. So he's already narrowed it down to the one option. And then saying he's gonna adopt her kids. And he's springing on all this, and it should have been more, I feel like, of a mutual conversation. And okay, she freaks out about him saying he planned, like when they got married, he planned on adopting the boys, which is great, and I love it, and it's super sweet. But she's also worried about them losing the part of them that belongs to their father. Which is a valid thing. Like, as a child of divorce, it's a thing. You don't want to lose that portion of your family. And granted, it's different because both of my parents were alive when the divorce happened. But there's still that sense of connection that you want to feel. So what I would have liked to see is Tristan and her have a conversation, and then it come down to the boys, because the boys, especially Harry and Fletcher, who are older, and maybe even Patrick, I mean, he seems to kind of know enough to sit down and talk with him and see if that's something that they're okay with. And then it was super cute that he wanted to hyphenate their names, so it's Anderson Miles, and he wanted to make sure that they were his children in the eyes of the law. And I see where he's coming from. It's coming from such a loving, wanting to care for them place that, you know, and maybe this is just me kind of extending it even more, but in my mind, I saw it as if something happens to him, he wants to make sure his boys are taken care of and they're not seen as not his children. But I just feel like it should have been a conversation between them. And I wish that he would have said something, maybe apologized, maybe not apologized, but just them had a conversation about the way it was sprung on him. I would have liked for Claire to kind of step up a little bit and be like, I understand where you're coming from this. I understand it's coming from a place of love and a place of care for me and my boys. But these big life decisions need to be a decision made together, either as a couple or as a whole family, and not, this is the way I picture it, this is the way I want it to be, so I have the means to, so I'm going to show you this house that I'm this far away from signing on. And she definitely overreacted. So I thought that was kind of disappointing. And then the weird back and forth, and only she apologized, and then he was butthurt, and I get it, he was butthurt, but I wanted them to have more conversation about the situation. And I can't tell you how many times I was like, when they were arguing over the adoption thing, I was like, let the boys decide. I was like yelling at the audiobook. I was like, let the boys decide. All of the boys would probably say yes, because they all came to see Tristan as their new father, or as a second father. But that, especially Fletcher, I mean, he's old enough, and I think Harry, and Patrick as well, I think Patrick would totally be on board with, I think they'd all be on board with it, but it needed to be a conversation, and not a, this is my plan of what we're doing, because she does have those maternal instincts of, you're not their blood father, and not that you don't care about them, but I'm going to protect my children. And also wanting to save the memories and the spirit of their father for them. And then the other tiny little thing that I got super nitpicky about is when, after the boys run away to Paris, where Tristan is, which, tell me how they managed to get on the plane without passports. Okay, they bought the tickets, but I'm pretty sure even as a child, you still need a passport, at least when you're not a baby. So that was kind of weird. But anyway, so they show up in France, and he says something when Claire is like completely breaking down and sobbing, and she's been having a breakdown pretty much for a week. And he's just like, this isn't my Claire. This isn't my Claire. My Claire is always so strong. And he says something like that. And then I just kind of got upset by that, because that's the thing that Claire needs. She has had to be so strong as a single mother, as a grieving mother, and for herself and her kids, that Tristan is supposed to be the safe space for her, where she doesn't have to be strong, where she can be weak in those moments. And I wanted him to push what he was saying just a touch more, and to be like, you're usually so strong. You're usually, like, what I love about you is you are such a strong woman. I don't know. I just, maybe the verbal recognition, I just wanted him to recognize that, you know, you don't have to be strong 100% of the time. And yeah. I also did wish that they dealt with the grief part a little bit more, because it was kind of touched on in the beginning, and then it was kind of touched on their first kind of breakup after the whole Paris situation when she was wearing the rings. And I understand why Tristan was upset, because she did not take them off when she came back, and she was using that as a defense mechanism. But I wish that we would have seen them have that conversation either before that fight even happened, where she was just like, I don't really want to talk about it, but I'm going through a struggle. She didn't have to get into the nitty-gritty details, but I wish she would have been open enough with him to say, it's a hard day. It's a hard night. It's a hard evening. Like, whatever it needs to be, just told me, don't ask me questions, or I cannot talk about it right now. I just need to purge the emotion that's going through me right now. And I feel like he could have had a little more grace and a little more understanding, and maybe learned a little bit more from Claire and the boys about how they specifically are processing their grief and how he can best support them when they have those moments of grief, of heavy grief. But I also wish that she would have at least said something, so he didn't just feel completely blindsided by it all and just been like, instead of trying to brush it off and be the strong woman, I wish that when he found her crying in the shower and afterwards, she would have been just like, not blaming it on her period. I wish she would have been like, I'm having a moment, I'm struggling with feelings of guilt, of feelings of whatever, however she wanted to word it, for my husband, for my children, towards you, and it's just a little overwhelming for me right now, and I need a minute, either with you or without you. So I wish, and because they had that tension and that little bit of a fight about it, I was kind of disappointed that we never saw that situation really worked through and delved into, because I mean, no matter how much Claire is in love with Tristan, for the rest of their lives together, she will have moments where she will miss her husband, her first husband, where she will feel sadness about him not being in the boys' lives when they graduate, when they get married, all of these things, all of these moments that he's going to miss in their lives. And there was at points where Claire, when she talked about her own grief, I liked that, but because I wanted more of that, I wanted to really kind of see Tristan brought into how her and the boys are processing their grief more. And we see it with Harry when they're going to the funeral, when they're going to the cemetery and stuff. But I just wanted, I don't know, more understanding between both of them about that situation. And then that little bit at the beginning when she told her that it was time to move on. I was like, you don't make that decision. You don't tell someone when it's time to move on from your grief. But anyway, so yeah, super little nitpicky things, but overall I enjoyed it. After that first introduction with the kiddos and Tristan, I loved every other scene with him. I really, Tristan and Patrick was the cutest thing, and I loved how he really kind of wore down Fletcher, and Harry was just a problem child. And I loved he called him Wiz because he's like for wizard. But I enjoyed it. I know that the other books in this series aren't quite as highly loved. I may or may not pick them up. Who knows? I might read the blurbs first. But it's another new author to me, which is fun. And I can see why this book is so loved. There's just a little bit of nitpicky stuff for me, but the biggest detraction for me was just the grief and it not being 100% dealt with, where I felt like everybody understood the situation and what was going on. But that also could be because I'm projecting some things and I have such, I don't know, a close personal relationship with heavy grief. But yeah, 4.5 stars. And I enjoyed it. I really did enjoy it. And I would consider buying the paperback of this for my shelf. So that tells you how much I enjoy it, because I usually just try to buy books that I have read and I have loved and I would be willing to reread most of the time, especially the indie ones. So yeah, as for prompts, audiobook and host recommendation. So this book officially gives me a blackout. Here is my final bingo board. Yeah, I'm pretty happy. I read 7 books for the readathon, which for what my current reading has been like the past year and several months is way above what it normally is. Usually I'm like 2 books a week lately. But I just had a lot of fun. I only had 3 books on my official TBR and I read 2 of them. The third, which is the Vivian Lorette book, I will be picking up ASAP because I need to read it. I have been dying for this book since the previous book came out, and so this will be the next physical book I'm picking up for sure. But I will get to it very soon. But yeah, if you participated in the readathon, let me know down below what your favorite book is. If you've read any of these, if you have any other thoughts about these books, or if you have any recommendations for me based off of my thoughts on these books. And if you'd like to just leave me an emoji, instead leave me your favorite colored heart for Romance Takeover. I had a lot of fun and I can't wait for the next readathon to pop around. But yeah, so like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you all very soon with another video.